This is the Indianness podcast, stories of success from leaders and change makers of Indian origin. Why have Indians achieved success across so many different disciplines around the globe? I have no idea, but let's find out together. Every story is unique, and we have a very unique one today. I'm very excited to have Prith Banerjee with us today. He's the Chief Technology Officer for ANSYS, a global leader in engineering simulation. But he's also been CTO for ABB, which is another large global conglomerate, Schneider Electric, and also global technology MD for Accenture. He's been on the board of several publicly traded companies, a published author, and also a very strong leader in the academic world. I invited him on this show as he's had the journey from academics to industry to academics and innovation. And I'm curious as to why and how he has traveled that journey. Welcome, Prith. It's an absolute pleasure to have you on our podcast.
Thank you very much, Sanjay. Looking forward to discussing this topic with you.
Wonderful. Prith, as you know, this is about folks who want to know or follow in some shape or form the journey you had or learn from that journey. So in order for us to get to know about the journey, the defining moments of the journey, we kind of have to go right in the beginning. So if you can just walk us, where were you born? Tell us a little bit about your parents and siblings. Please, that will be very helpful.
Absolutely. Delighted to do that. So I was born in Khartoum, Sudan. This is kind of an interesting thing. I'm obviously of Indian origin, of Indian parents. But my father used to work for the Indian embassy. So he was located in Sudan, which is where I was born in 1960. And so I don't remember anything about Sudan. I spent my first, 2.5 years and then moved to India.
Where in India did you move to?
So I stayed in Calcutta. I mean, we are originally Bengalis. We have a home in Calcutta. But my father had a rotating job. So after we came to India, then we went to Maithon, Bihar. He worked there for a while. Then he went to Bhutan. We lived there for about 4 years. So my childhood was all moving from place to place every 4 years. So that is actually one of the things that I think did influence my background, which I will talk about later.
So, but moving, sorry to interrupt you. Moving places means new schools, new friends, new environments. Bhutan is culturally very different. Sudan is culturally different. Bengal. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as to how that, yeah. So please go ahead.
I will talk about it. And it has sort of taught me how to be adaptable because, the reason you will see, we'll talk about it, right? I've had the opportunity to work with many different organizations in academia, in startups, in large companies, right? And I think I attribute it to the fact that my father actually moved from location to location and he was successful and we also grew up and we knew how to make new friends. So it is sort of built into my DNA, I guess, to be adaptable and so on. So that's something that I think has clearly had an impact. Talking about my parents parents are both Bengalis. They're from middle class families, hardworking families, and so on. But they greatly valued education. In fact, I still remember my father telling one of his closest friends, he was having a conversation. They were having a conversation about one person trying to invest in buying a car or home or whatever. And my father said, the best investment I can make is the education of my two children, my brother and I. And of course, I was very young when he said it, but he repeated that to me when I was older. And that still resonates with me. And that is part of Indianness. I think most Indian parents value the education of their children higher than any other material things.
That's a message that resonates, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. So you moved from Bhutan. Where did you go from Bhutan?
So I'll tell you. So my again, so my elementary school was in Maithon in Bihar, and then I did my schooling in Calcutta. I went to Don Bosco School, Calcutta.
For people who don't know,
And
it's a very prestigious school.
it is, and okay, that is another of the Indianness thing that when you asked me when we were prepping for this call, you're talking about sort of Indians doing well and so on and so forth. And one of the things I attribute to is the fact that some of us in India have the chance to go to these prestigious English medium schools, which gives us the communications advantage in working in countries such as the US, right? People who have not gone through those English medium schools, Catholic schools, actually are at a disadvantage. So again,
you think that's a disadvantage, Prith?
no. So what I'm saying is, and many of my sort of family friends and so on, right? Family members, their children did not go to these English medium Catholic schools. They were relatively expensive compared to the other public schools that were there. And that was sort of the point I was trying to make, that my parents decided to invest in the education, right, over other things, right? They, I'm sure, give up buying a car or whatever so that my brother and I could both get to that fantastic English medium school, Catholic school education, which is part of the reason that I think I become successful. So anyway, that was.
But how was Don Bosco for you? How was that experience? Because after moving around, it was competitive. Did you make friends there?
It was competitive as friend, but the thing is, we were enrolled in Don Bosco school, but as I said, we were living in Bhutan, we were living whatever, right? So we actually went through a very interesting school background where we were technically registered in Don Bosco, but the schooling was all self-schooling, right? So essentially we came, did exams, homeschooling. My mom and my parents, my father said they did the coaching, but we took the exams to graduate from class to class and so on, right? But that was hard for about 3-4 years trying to do this while you're commuting back and forth and doing this. So that was also part of the challenge, right? So in the early years, it was not that easy to make friends. It was the academic thing that we were doing and not quite doing it. And then the sort of little things about sacrifices that my mother made, right? And when we were going to school, so we did not have a home because our home was our home in Bhutan, right? So when we are periodically coming here, we are staying in Calcutta, and my mother's parents' home was in Howrah, which is a relatively remote part of Calcutta, right? And so early in the morning, my mom used to take my brother and I in public transportation, right? Took like an hour and a half to 2 hours, right? And she stayed at school with us. She couldn't go back, right? And she spent the entire day and got up in the very early in the morning, right? Cooked all our food and lunch and so on. Stayed at school all day and then took us back home, right? The way back in the evening. These kind of sacrifices are things that you sort of see, right?
And they leave an imprint on your mind. But tell me, this homeschooling, at least in India, that must have been hard, right? Your mom, I mean, what did you get the textbooks and then your mom and dad would teach you? How would that work?
So that is another interesting thing. So it is not totally homeschooling. It is sort of, so what happened was it was partly homeschooling, partly sort of self-schooling, motivated and so on. I mean, I also was fortunate to have a brother who is 2.5 older than me. And so he did a lot of the self-schooling, and he was my coach, my mentor, and he still is my coach and mentor, right? And we have both had identical sort of careers. So we both went to Don Bosco School. We both went to IIT Kharagpur. We both went to University of Illinois for the PhD. We both went into electrical engineering. Both are in academia and both have worked in companies. So it is just an identical background. And I a lot of my sort of my advancement and so on, I do attribute to the very successful brother that I have.
So he would be teaching you. I mean, I've heard of older brother giving hand-me-downs to their younger, but he was actually teaching you in many ways.
Yes, exactly. So because I was a couple of years, so he was the one who had to really learn on his own and sort of
But were you doing okay in the grades and exams and stuff?
We were both reasonably good students, so we did not need a lot of help. When we got stuck, so when my brother got stuck, he was helped by my father. And when I got stuck, I was helped by my brother. So that's another part of the Indianness, right? The very interesting thing of the background. For 4 years. This happened for 4 years.
And then after that?
After that, my father relocated to Calcutta. So then the high school years, you cannot do this kind of stuff. This were like in grades, sort of, I would say 3 to 6, right? We could manage this, right? The 8, 9, 10, 12, that grade you need to do in actual school.
So you were there in Cal. You were in Cal at that time.
And so then I guess the rest of my journeys, I was fortunate to have done very well in school. So I got into IIT Kharagpur, which you probably know is a top place, right? And so that was the other part.
Now, your brother had already gotten in, right? So there was a lot of pressure on you that you have to get into.
Absolutely. In fact, throughout my career, I let me tell you,
because he set the benchmark for you, man.
he set the benchmark, and so the expectation was I had to do as good as my brother or better. So it was an interesting, without competition. It was very, very healthy.
Fire. It was an aspirational thing. But then, Prith, when you got into Kharagpur, now, for people who don't know, IIT Kharagpur probably, I would say, is, and I could be wrong, but probably, we have a lot of IITs. It's one of the better or top IITs in many.
It is the oldest IIT. And at that time, it was one of the best ones. So at the time when I went, now there are other IITs who have become improved, but at the time when I went, it was one of the most prestigious IITs. But the story I want to share with you is the following, right? So I was number one in my school, right? And in Bosco, right? So you are a top student and you think, well, you are on top of the world, right? Then you join IIT Kharagpur, right? And you join in electronics, which is the most sort of prestigious thing. At that time, they didn't have computer science, right? So the batch of 30 students, right? And you look around, and this person is the number one student from South Point. The other one is number one from St. Xavier's. And so I call my mom, I said, these are all number ones, right? So the pressure that you get through, right? So you in your sort of 10 years in school, right? You are going through this thing and essentially you establish yourself as the number one student. In the last 3-4 years, you just coast through, right? Because everybody knows you're the number one, so on. But now it's a reset, right? It's a reset, one amongst many, and they're all super smart.
But how was that, Prith? I mean, you had a brother who kind of was there, but that must have been a shock to you.
It is a shock, right? And so the first year was really, really tough and so on. And so having 30 number one students from different schools, right? And then as it turns out, I finally did graduate at the top of my class. I got a President's Gold Medal from Kharagpur, which is so number one across all disciplines. So,
but what helped you through that process?
So this is the thing this is the part I want to tell you, right? The part I want to tell you about was number one, I was fortunate to have had a mentor in my brother, right? Who sort of kept me on the right path. There are many very bright students who go, the first time they leave home, they go to a college, right? And they find the independence and they just go astray, right? I mean, drugs and this and alcohol, all kinds of stuff, right?
And time management,
so on, right? The fact that I had a elder brother who was, by the way, who also graduated at the top of his class in Don Bosco and in Kharagpur, right? And so there was again an expectation that here is Prith Banerjee, brother of Sanjay Banerjee, who is following his things, right? So I could not go astray, right? So I think that the fact that I had a mentor, a person to follow, right? Even though I had all kinds of distractions, I could not, because of the societal pressure on me, would not allow me to do things that a normal person would have done. So I think that is again part of Indianness, right? Indianness being that in an Indian sort of family thing, right? Your cultural standing and so on, right? I mean, you don't want to do anything that it brings you shame, family shame, right? That is just not proper. So that is sort of part of Indianness. I think that's an important thing, right? And as I mean, I have a son, which I will talk about, right? When he graduated from Berkeley, in his graduation speech, like I kind of gave him a heartfelt message, said, have a true moral compass, right? And irrespective of whatever happens in your career, right? Follow the moral compass, right? Which I'm sure you know, right? Basically, don't follow money, don't follow fame, whatever. Right? Do things because inherently in your heart, you know what is right? And if you just do what is right in every step of the way, right? In your job, in this pursuing this, etc., you will always be right. And so that moral compass thing, I think I learned from my father and down through my brother and so on. So that is part of the reason why I did not go astray, and I managed to stay at the top of the class.
So you think your moral compass was set by your father?
Absolutely. My father and my mother, actually. In fact, I wrote a book recently.
The book on innovation that you wrote. Yeah, we'll come to that. But so your moral compass, which I think is a very, very important point you're making, which is also part of Indianness in many ways, is what guides you. So that kept you in those tough years
to do the right things, but just doing the right thing does not necessarily make you the academically most successful thing. Because I mean, this is also the context I was trying to use. Here I am in IIT, right? In my class of electronics, right? In a larger class of among disciplines, there were 500 students, right? So to go from this highly competitive thing, and look, many people do the right things and so on, right? But you also need luck. So one of the things I will tell you is, right, and it is.
You believe in luck?
So I actually believe in a combination of luck and practice, right? And so there's stories that people say, oh my God, here is this sort of this football player who scored a goal. Oh my God, that was so lucky, right? It was so lucky. And this football player, I forget who it was, who said, you're absolutely, I was lucky. And it turns out that the more I practice, the luckier I get, right? And but the point is that the reason I believe in luck is you can practice and prepare all the time, but you also need a break, right? And then in my career, I have been fortunate to have got the right breaks at the right time, right? And so you need both. You need luck. You cannot just get to the top with pure luck, but you cannot also get to the top. I'm not saying I'm at the top. I'm at I would say top 10%, right? You cannot also get to the top purely through hard work.
So it's a combination of preparation and luck, is what you're saying. So now, Prith, your brother had by the time probably graduated when you were coming out, right? He had gone to University of Illinois. Why did he decide? Was that a decision that he made?
So at that time, right? Again, the years were at that time, the University of Illinois had very strong ties to the formation of IIT Kharagpur way back when in 1950 it was University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign faculty who had actually created IIT Kharagpur, the electronics department, right? So all our professors had a tie to them. So in our time, right, we always all aspired to go to Illinois. Currently, it is MIT, Stanford, Berkeley, but at that time, Illinois was the place to go, right? So my brother went to Illinois. And so it was just, if I could get into Illinois, I would go to Illinois. Was a thing, right? But I mean, we are both in electrical engineering, but my brother went to semiconductor, electronics, and I went to the computer engineer. So we kind of deviated in the subfield, but I still went to sort of the University of Illinois.
So when you, so as soon as you graduated, you went there?
Went straight to Illinois.
To Illinois.
With a full scholarship and so on. So again, again, this is part of the, was fortunate. I was number one in my class, a president governor. So I had actually offers from multiple universities with full scholarship, but I chose Illinois because it was a good school. And from my parents' perspective, hey, Prith, you go where your brother is, right? So,
But by that time, wasn't he graduating out?
no. So he was sort of about to graduate. So, I mean, it's always,
There is that overlap was there.
there's a 4 years for 4 to 5 years for a PhD, and he was,
So there was an overlap.
there's an overlap. So he always was there to provide the guidance. Again, that is another example where when people from India come here, you can go astray. Hey, you are leaving home, you're leaving India for the first time, and you do crazy things, right? Because I had that social pressure and I had a mentor, I did not do crazy things, right? So I sort of focused on doing well, et cetera, et cetera. And you can call it a boring life, but you can call it, but I mean, it's not like, I had a lot of fun, but in constraints, right? I never lost track of the moral compass.
So, how was your experience coming to the US? Now, obviously, you had a brother, and Illinois, which is, Urbana Champaign is a little different than IIT Kharagpur. IIT is the academics are a little different, etc. How was that?
So that was, talk about shock. That was the real, real shock when from Don Bosco to this thing. The only shock was, I now in Don Bosco, there was a sort of a distribution, a Gaussian distribution of the talent of the people, right? I went into a group which was all sort of super sharp, right? So that was a shock. But coming to the US, right? And again, I will tell you, I came to the US in 1981. I'm dating myself. So at that time, like today, right? I mean, the world is global, right? I mean, you are in India and you're watching CNN, right? You're watching the same shows and you're watching Netflix and so on. So kids in India these days are exposed to the same US culture, right? Throughout, right? And it's not a challenge. For me, coming from a pure sort of middle class Bengali culture, et cetera, this to come to the US was a hugely transformational thing, right? I'm sure you know this, right? So this was, so in addition to the academic challenges, now there was the extra dimension of a cultural challenge, and oh my God, everything is new and so on, right? And I mean, I just walk around and so I mean, my office, they were all Americans, right? And just American kids would just come and raise, hey, Prith, what's shaking, man? And he's okay. So I didn't know what to respond, right? So I came to my brother. He said, well, he's just making. He just said, how are things, right? So don't worry about it. So next day, I see an American friend. So I tell him, hey, Craig, what's shaking? And he just slaps me again and says, oh, nothing's shaking but the trees, leaves on the trees. So I learned that, okay, that's the way to do talk. I'm just saying, so culturally, right, the things that you learned earlier, so now you are relearning a whole new culture to get along with people and so on, right? And that it is hard. I mean, again, as I said, I didn't get used to CNN and Netflix and YouTube at that time, right? So this was a absolutely brand new things and so on, right?
So, how did you get through all of that? Was that hard? Did you think maybe I should go back?
It was hard. I mean, it was not easy, and again, trying to sort of, again, now all these students who are here, right? And again, they are the top of the top, right? From now the best universities in the world, they're coming here, and so now again that thing got reset, right? And you have to do well. And anyway, so that was part of my.
And you came from the weather temperature of Kharagpur
To a super Illinois cold weather, wet. And the very first year we had the worst winter storm in like 20 years, right? So, I mean, just walking through sort of 2 feet of snow, right? Drudging through the snow and going to class and trying to do this, right? And wearing a parka. And so it was just, and then trying to do, I mean, again, staying in an apartment, doing groceries and trying to learn how to cook. I never knew how to cook. I had to learn how to cook and do studies and so on and so forth. So this is all part of the learning experience. But I mean, I look back and I say, wow, that was an absolutely amazing experience. I learned to be truly independent by coming here, right, on my own, as opposed to coming here I mean, there's sort of two types of people here, right? Among my friends, right? People who came here while being married, and those people never learned how to cook. Right? And people like me who came as a bachelor who had to learn how to cook, right? To be independent, to survive, and so on. That's another part of this thing. So
How are the academics in Illinois? Did you have any issues with that?
So I fortunately, I again did graduate at a sort of top of my class and so on. So I take I had prepared me well. So that part was good. And actually I managed to do the sort of fastest PhD at Illinois. I mean, in 3 years, I went through the whole master's and PhD process. So I mean, I almost have a record for and then I was and then uh, I was managed again. I had all kinds of job opportunities, but including sort of IBM Research, Bell Labs, etc., and also about a dozen universities. But Illinois sort of made an offer for me to stay back at Illinois as a professor. Again, that is something which is very unique. Usually, universities don't recruit their own. So now this is an example of luck and being at the right place at the right time. And I will tell you how usually they do not hire their own, right? And the year was 1984, and there was a tremendous shortage of computer science, computer engineering professors across the US, and especially at Illinois, because Illinois being located in Urbana-Champaign, which is not the most desirable city in the world, right? Illinois was struggling to recruit top-notch faculty, right? And so here I had graduated, right? And I had offers from the Carnegie Mellons and the UCLAs and Michigans and all the top schools, right? And I could have gone anywhere. In fact, I had verbally accepted to go to Carnegie Mellon. I had made up my mind, we have CMU. But my advisor took those dozen offer letters to the dean saying that, look at Prith, if this guy is so good, he got 10 offers from IBM, 5 offers from Bell Labs. He is a good kid, right? You should bend the rules. Now, the reason they bend the rules is because they were having a hard time in 1984 to recruit top quality people, right? Now, things have changed now, right? I mean, again, now Illinois is well known and so on, and people there. So I happened to be at the right place at the right time, right? Where there was, look, if there were not any openings, and if there was not a dearth of sort of computing whatever talent, right? I would have gone to Carnegie Mellon. I would have gone there. I mean, I'm sure I would have done well, but Illinois was one of the best places for me to develop as a faculty member. And I will tell you why. So as a faculty, right? I mean, people think, oh, you're a faculty, you're just teaching, right? But in the US, the teaching part is I would say only 1/4 of your job. The main job is to do research. And to do research, you have to do the research with graduate students, and you have to support those graduate students with funding, right? And so faculty members are always chasing funding, right? And you have to write these proposals to the National Science Foundation, to NASA, DARPA, right? And then at the end, and you write lots of publications, and then you get tenure, right? And you have sort of 6 years, maximum 6 years, and it's up or out, right? So either you get promoted to associate professor or you're kicked out, right? You don't get any. So it's very, very stressful. I mean, those years are extremely stressful. 6 years is the maximum you have. So again, I was lucky that I made that in a shorter amount of time. But that is again part of the luck. The luck part, I would say, is because I was at Illinois, I didn't have to learn. I mean, I knew the professors, I knew the system. My professor, my advisor, who was at Illinois at the time, helped me for the first some grants, right? So he said, hey, I have an SRC grant, right? Hey, why don't you join me in this, right? So he wrote two of these things, proposals together, and so on. So that early break I got because I was in the same sort of university as my advisor. Now, I had to, but the first funding, right? The first funding came in, right? And then there were things like, so at that time, I'm a junior assistant professor, right? I mean, there was this very, very prestigious thing that the National Science Foundation used to give out, and that is no longer there, called the Presidential Young Investigator, PYI, big deal, right? So very competitive. Everybody writes. I got it, right? So again, I will tell that is luck. I mean, look, there are lots and lots of people who apply, right? They're all very good. But to get that was, I mean,
But how is that luck? I don't understand that. How is that luck?
because look, I mean, look, I have been on panels, I've been on the judging areas and so on, right? I mean, look, as I said, there is luck and there's practice. So obviously I had a good record, right? But I can assure you, in that group of sort of 10 PYI awardees, right? There were like 1,000 people who applied, right? And to make it to that thing, right, and I will tell you, just because I got the PYI, right? The rest of the grants, right? I got then the next year I got the IBM Faculty Development Award, right? So essentially, sort of success begets success is what they call, right? So, oh my God, he got the PYI. Therefore, when next time I wrote an NSF grant, oh, he's a PYI. Therefore, he must be good, right? So essentially, and because of that, I got early tenure, right? So I had a whole bunch of people who are all in the line thing for sort of 6 years, and here is Prith. So now, so this is what I'm saying. And you know, another thing about luck, let me tell you. And so while I was being recruited, right, the department head, the dean at Illinois said, the reason we don't want to recruit our own is we want you to be independent, right? Well, the faculty is supposed to be independent of anybody else. Once they get tenure, they don't listen to even the president, right? Or the dean, because you're supposed to have absolute independence in your thought process, right? So my dean said, you have to be independent of your advisor, right? Now, this is a challenge, right? The advisor, on one hand, helps you, but on the other hand, he now thinks of you as a junior guy who will do all the hard work, writing the proposals and so on, and his name gets the grant, but then you are doing all the hard work, right? So it was a kind of interesting thing, which I absolutely, it was good for me. But then the lucky part was, as it turns out, my advisor got a fantastic chair professor offer from UT Austin, and he left before I got my tenure. So this is another luck factor, right? So in a university, right? So there are these tracks. Say, okay, you are the leader in a field of, say, cryptography, or a field of this computing or fault-tolerant computing, right? So if that advisor is already there, that university already has a star in that area. There's no need to give a tenure to another person in the same area, right? In a way. So the way I was adjusting it, I actually changed my research direction to be, by design, trying to be away from my advisor, wrote papers, independent. So it was a hard struggle trying to be independent. But the fact that he left on his own, right? At the right time, because he helped me in the first few years when I really needed to have my own wings. He left so I could really have my own wings. So I'm telling you, that is luck.
That is luck. And that I agree with you, is luck. That is truly luck.
But anyway, so let me go on. So then I am doing well in my career. So I got tenure by this. So I got tenure associate professor. Then another 4 years I got a full professor. So the thing that I said about the fastest PhD, I was also one of the fastest to get to 4+4 to 8 years to get tenure, right? So then the thing is, then there is a lot of sort of, the next step is, okay, so what do you do, right? You become a chair professor, you have a department head, etc., right? And there is, Illinois, there were 100 faculty of electrical engineering in the department. It is one of the top 3 or 4 departments in the country, MIT, Stanford, Berkeley, Illinois. It's a powerhouse, right? So yes, I'm a full professor, I'm tenure and so on, but now I'm one of 100 super smart people, right? to stand out among them, right, is another. So you have to have an opportunity, right? And I will give you an example of luck, being in the right place at the right time. And I don't want your audience to say that, oh, this Prith guy is only all luck, right? It's not luck, but it's a combination of luck. I mean, I have had to prove things also, but I will tell you. So my research area was in the area of what is called high performance computing, supercomputing, right? And so the University of Illinois was the sort of hotbed of supercomputing, and I was doing research on supercomputing applications, right? And at that time, the college wanted to start a new program, a computational science and engineering program, like a graduate program, and with this thing, with a lot of interesting things. First time, the person who was trying to do this, right, was incredibly smart, really whatever, but his personality was very arrogant. So he basically said, "This is my way or the highway. You guys know nothing. I'm telling you this is what it should happen." In a company that works, but in a university setting, it fails, right? So he proposed it, went away, and I watched him. I watched him fail. Second time around, there was another professor who was appointed as his designate, right? I will not mention the individuals because I don't know that, right? Another person from his sort of descendants, right? He tried to come in, right? And he made the same mistakes that this professor was right. You guys know nothing. And I'm telling you, this is what we should do. And I watched and I learned. I said, this is why, I mean, conceptually, they're absolutely right track, but the approach was not right. And I was on both those committees where I saw it being proposed and it failed. Now the luck part comes in, right? Two failures. The dean calls me up and says, "Prith, okay, one other thing about luck. At this time, I had an offer to be the department head of computer science at UCLA. That is not luck. That is, I mean, they had full search. I got the offer, right? So, I mean, I'd stayed at Illinois enough times, and so let me give it a shot. So I got the offer. The timing luck is to counter it, right? At that time, the University of Illinois was about to start this computational science engineering program. So the counter is I need to have like an equivalent. So I have already a full professor. I need that thing, right? So this opportunity came in. I had the outside offer. They matched it, and I became the founding director of CSE, right? But then I actually had to make it successful. So I was a third guy. And this time it went through because I saw the mistakes that the two previous people made, right? And I made sure it followed the academic things, solicit the input of everybody, all the departments on board. And within a year, we had a successful CSE program at the University of Illinois. So the luck factor is a sort of combination. Again, as I said, I got the first job because Illinois was having difficulty recruiting people. I had a good, obviously I would go. I mean, look, I had a dozen offers, but there are other people who probably had a dozen offers, but so I had the opportunity, I had that thing, right? And so that helped. The fact that I had an offer from UCLA to be a computer science department head, right? And I would have left, and the dean knew it, right? That matching thing, again, timing wise, right? It did work. So that was sort of the first sort of 12 years in my career in academia. And I owe 80% of my professional success to my first 12 years at Illinois. I kid you not. Because in those years, those formative years, I did the most fundamental research. I had access to the very best graduate students. These were all students from the IITs and so on. I graduated more than 35 PhD students, 350 papers. I mean, I am what I am today because of those formative years. When you are at a top engineering school like MIT, Stanford, Berkeley, Illinois, Georgia Tech, Carnegie Mellon, right? I mean, you are part of that really solid research thing, right? And I look back and I received all kinds of awards in my life, fellow of IEEE, fellow of ACM, all those things were because of the research I did at the University of Illinois with those wonderful graduate students that I had and the faculty members I had. And I think the success was basically because I stayed back at the same school to do this. Now, here is what where I started. So I did my PhD, I did a master's, all from the University of Illinois, right? And I could have retired at Illinois. I could have just because I had a good life. I had nothing else to show or prove to anyone. I had proved myself, right, and so on. At that time, my wife, she encouraged me, says, "This is ridiculous. You need to do something different from your life." And so she was the reason that I said, okay, let's look for an opportunity. And again, I mean, there were opportunities that came my way because you are at the top engineering school. So I get a chance to be a department head of electrical engineering at Northwestern, right? So Northwestern is a prestigious private university, well known as an overall top 10 university, known as an engineering school, maybe sort of 15 or whatever, but in electrical engineering, they were not so good. So here was an opportunity for me, right, to come in from a powerhouse electrical engineering department and make an impact, right? And that was the first, you kind of asked about challenges. This was my first challenge, right? In my professional career, I had done all the things as an individual, as a professor. I've done sort of stuff, right? Now, can I take a department which is not as highly ranked in the say 25 or whatever in the US News, right? Located in a top engineering college, located inside a fantastic university ranking. The university ranking was to the top 10. Illinois was got, right? Nobody knows of Illinois except in electrical engineering, right? And so here was my opportunity to do this, right? This, I would say, I don't know if you call it luck or whatever, but this was the challenge I accepted, right? Now, this is where I say my wife's thing is very important, right? Because she said, you're just you're vegetating at Illinois, right? Because she looked around with other faculty members who had just retired at Illinois. And she said, no, I want you to do something else with your life, right? So she pushed me, right? And leaving my comfort level at the University of Illinois, where I knew everybody, the dean, president, provost, everybody knew me, right? Going to a whole new environment where I could completely be a disaster, right? In a private school. And again, I mean, it's a school with big risk, right? In a private school, people coming from public schools actually don't succeed in private schools. But I spent 8 wonderful years at Northwestern and I did very well, reasonably well, et cetera, right? And then I became a dean at the University of Illinois, Chicago, etc. So those were all fantastic things that I was able to move up in the academic leadership because of the early days at Illinois, right? And again, I thank all the graduate students that I've had. As I said, more than 35 students, or the 350 papers and so on. But now let me share with you a personal change trajectory. Again, motivated by my wife. So I had done my University of Illinois, she pushed me to go to Northwestern, right? And so tried. But now I was again in academia doing stuff, right? With department head. Then I became a dean and so on. So I was in academia and she looked around, right? Many of her sort of compatriots, their husbands were in industry and they're doing startups and so on and so forth. I said, hey, I hear XYZ is doing a startup, right? I mean, why are you so comfortable in your academic life, right? I said, okay, let me see if I can do a thing, right? So the next big sort of phase in my career was to do a startup based on, say, again, the research that I done at Northwestern. We shown some interest. The year was 2000. So I am still not, it's still a .com. So, but this was after the .com crash. So that's the other thing. So I will actually tell you about something. So I'm trying to start a company, right? And I was still in academia. So I'm a department head at Northwestern. So I'm in academia, trying to start a company because I'm due for a sabbatical. So in sabbatical, basically you can take leave from a university for a year and do whatever stuff, right? And so it was an interesting place to be, right? And the timing was just before the dot-com crash, and everybody was starting companies, and I was trying to do something in Chicago. So that's the catch, right? And so I wrote some business plans, and again, I had no idea of writing business plans. I'm an academic, right? I learn, I write whatever. I talk to a lot of people. Northwestern had a good business school, the Kellogg School. So I talked to their dean at the time, and he helped me and so on. So I wrote a business plan, and I got funding. Means I got term sheet for funding. At the rate I said I wanted pre-money of 8 million. I was trying to raise 2.5 million. Yep. Whatever I wanted, I got, right? And the VC, so this is why I say the pre-bust, right? The VC said, Prith, this looks so good. You should just do this. And why are you waiting for the money to come in? You should just hire the people and buy the equipment and rent offices. So I did all of it, right? And I went into a $100,000 personal debt, right? Because the VC said, oh, this is just going to come, right? Just don't worry, just go for it because, hey, we are just doing the legal documents and so on. And they were just dragging their feet in trying to, so it's that the weekend of Thanksgiving, right? So on the Wednesday and I'm supposed to fly to the East Coast to sign and get the paperwork and the funding on Monday after Thanksgiving. On Wednesday afternoon, the VC calls and says, we are pulling out. I said, what do you mean pulling out? Is there? Because the dot-com bust had just happened, right? And everything was in bad. She said, aren't you reading the news? I said, yes. She says, well, we are pulling out. Now I am $100,000 in the hole. I am an academic. I don't have a lot of money, right? And I'd actually taken a second mortgage on my home, right? And I had a 3-year-old or 4-year-old son, right? So it's just maybe 8-year-old. So just one son. My wife does not work. She's a homemaker. I am a professor. Professors don't make a lot of money. And I'm deep in debt without a clue, right? So, I mean, talking about, you asked me for low point. That was the low point in my career, right? And that Thanksgiving was the worst Thanksgiving, right? And we had people over, I was carving the turkey and so on. The back of my mind, I said, what the heck am I going to do, right? My life has just gone from perfect success to complete disaster, right? There's no company and I'll be poor and I don't know how to pay off this $100,000, etc. So I'm in deep trouble, right? So I will tell you that challenge was actually the opportunity. So I will tell you, Sanjay, had I got that easy money, I would have built the wrong product. Because the product that I was building was based on a DARPA-sponsored research, right? So DARPA had this thing I had demoed it to Department of Defense, and here's this DARPA stuff, right? So the R&D prototype I had built was for defense applications. And I was just going to do that and just copy paste and say, here's a product, right? I would have spent a lot of money. This entire $2 million would have gone into the waste without talking to a single customer. Because, hey, I have done the research. I have all the publications. I have the patents. I have the exclusive licensing from Northwestern to this company. I wrote the business plan. The VC has funded me. I'm king of the world. I don't need to talk to anybody, right? I would have wasted the entire money and built the wrong product. When this kick happened, I had no money. I talked to other VCs. The VCs said, hey, do you have customers? I said, no. They said, go show customers, right? So I went on hyperdrive, talking to customers. And as I did, I had a really, really clear view of what it is I should build. And it was the new definition of the product was very, not 100% different, but enough different, right, to make a difference. But then I was, again, lucky with a company who I will not mention, right? This company gave me a $2 million deal over 3 years to build this product. The catch was it was exclusive to that company. And they were not the bigger player. So I don't want to mention companies. So let's imagine there are 2 or 3, like Toyota and a Ford, right? And I'm doing this Mickey Mouse project with a Yogo, right? So I landed up with Yogo. Why Yogo? Because they wanted this kind of technology. The big guys, they did not want to talk to a startup, right? So I partnered with a real tier 2 company to get the early money, right? But they had locked me into a 3-year contract, right? So I could not throw it anywhere. Using that, because I had a $2 million thing, right? That was my customer revenue. I was able to raise the $2 million from the VC. The luck part was in that 1 year that I built, that small company went out of business. We did not do well. And I was smart enough to put in a clause that if you do not renew in the 2nd year, I would be free from my exclusivity. That was luck. Had they succeeded, they would have locked me out and I would not be able to do anything, right? And then I raised 2nd round from this larger company, which I can now say what it is Xilinx. And then Xilinx actually finally bought my company, right? Now, that story of Excel chip is a book by itself, right? I mean, there's so many things. I mean, as a academic, right? You think you are trained to be a researcher, right? Not to a businessman, right? And there is a difference, right? When I am the founder, CEO, I go and talk to customers, right? Every customer says, oh, can you do that? And to me, the researcher is saying, wow, that's an interesting research problem. So I come back from California, tell my people, and hey, this is like interesting thing. So let's drop what we are doing. Let's work on this new thing. I pivoted. Then next week, I go to some other customer and they say, oh, can you do this? Oh, this is even more interesting. So I just kept pivoting. And so the learning was, I was not as disciplined as I should. And I blew through all that Series A $2 million without really building a focused product that would cater to lots and lots of customers, right? So there were mistakes, right? And then, of course, that got fixed in Series B, et cetera, et cetera. So again, I did not make those mistakes in my second startup. First startup, they all say you learn a lot, right? Which is why VCs actually fund failed entrepreneurs, right? Because they actually learn a lot. And I would not say successful entrepreneur. I was an okay entrepreneur because I did sell my company in the first round, but not at Facebook valuations, right? But I learned a lot in the process. And I did a second company. So phase 1 is my academia, 20 years. And phase 2 was my work in the 2 startups, Banerjee and Excel, right? So then I come back to the corporate world, my academic world. And now I'm getting all kinds of offers to be, so I'm a dean at that time. I'm getting offers as provost and all provost and presidents in different places, right? And I'm on that trajectory. Hey, I now need to go there. And I have an offer to be provost at the University of Rochester, which is a good school, another cold place, right? I'm going just one cold place. And I'm like this close to accepting the offer. And out of the left field, a search firm for the same thing said, hey, by the way, your name has come up to be the director of HP Labs, Hewlett Packard, right? And are you interested? Prestige HP Labs, right? But I said, you must be kidding. I have no experience in companies. He says, well, they are the last 6 director of HP Labs are promoted from within. This time, the CEO wants to look at somebody from academia with a startup background, and you fit the profile. Are you interested? So I interview and I get the job. And I would say it is lucky because in all the career things, right? When you look at IBM Research, HP Labs, Bell Labs, right? Every director has gone from within, right? No other place has recruited a guy from the top, right? Or from outside, right? So I lucked out in the fact that here was the CEO at HP at the time when I just had the right combination of things, right? He was looking for a person with my background, a combination of academia and startups, right? Now, and I moved to California. So now here is the thing, right? Which is part of the Indianness and so on, right? Or the lack of Indianness. So I now have two offers to be provost at the University of Rochester, and I stayed there 4 years. I will be a president of a university, no doubt. I'm in my mid 40s. By 50, I will be a president of a university. I know the trajectory is known. And now I have an offer. I'm mid 40s, right, to be director of HP Labs, going at the top of an organization, if in a company, right? And I have tenure at University of Illinois at Northwestern. Here I'm going to a place and I can be fired if I don't do well anytime, right? That is the real world, right? Everybody, including my brother, said, "You are crazy, Prith. Don't do this," right? Because he had a tenure position at UT Austin. All my friends, "You are tenured deanship. You are crazy. You have a provost offer. You're crazy." This is where, again, my wife said, "Go for it, interest."
So your wife is really, we need to do a podcast with her. She's the real risk taker and entrepreneur.
Had it not been for her, I would know, because I asked her, I said, "Look, you are a homemaker. Moving to California home prices are high. There is a possibility that we'll be out of a job and bye-bye, right?" I said, let's try it, right? And so there was this risk that we took, and I took it.
At HP Labs.
HP Labs.
At that time, HP Labs was still very prestigious.
And now, of course, HP Labs is no longer the case. But when I joined HP Labs in 2007, it was one of the top 4 prestigious labs: Bell Labs, IBM Research, Microsoft Research, and HP Labs, right? I mean, the very best people went there. So let's cut through the chase, a lot of exciting things that happened at HP Labs. But then HP started having its own challenges, right? And again, I worked under 3 CEOs, right? First under Mark Hurd, and under Leo Apotheker, then when Meg Whitman, and so on. And I could see the writing on the wall that HP Labs was headed in a downward trajectory. So this is where I would say it's not luck. You got to see where the writing is on the wall. I mean, you could have just, "Oh my God, I lucked out. I'm sort of have found a success story in a company, right? At least I moved from academia here. I have a stable job. I will not be fired, right?" But then I took another plunge, right? At HP, I was reporting to the CTO. I had an offer to be CTO at ABB, a power and automation company. Now, let me tell you one thing. In the world of job transfers and so on, they say that it is risky to take a different job in your same company. So suppose you are running HP Labs, right? And you become head of sales. There is a one-dimensional degree of risk because you have not done that before. So it's one risk because you are in the same company, but a different job. You can go to a different company, but same job. So suppose I go from HP Labs and become head of IBM Research. Same job, same industry, etc., right? The third thing is you go to a different industry. You are from an IT industry, you're going to automation industry, energy, transformer, switch gear, right? I have no clue. So I did 3 risks. I go from director of HP research lab to a CTO role, which is a different role because now you have to coordinate the business and so on. You go to a different industry, the ABB, and oh my God, you go to a different country, Zurich, a European company with different things and so on. So it was like highly, highly, highly risky, right? And so I did it. Why? Well,
because you thought it would challenge you.
It would challenge me, right? And that, boy, was that a hard thing. That was incredible. In fact, my CEO, Meg Whitman, said, "Prith, I know you, it looks like a shiny toy, And in the end, she said, Prith, don't go there. We want you to be here. And I said, well, do you have a CTO position? No, we don't, right? So her offer back was just stay back at HP Lab. I said, no, I'm. So basically I went to her and said, I have an offer as CTO of ABB. Can I have a CTO thing? And said, no. I mean, I will not create it, whatever role, except just because. So I that point, right, I have always taken risks in my life, right? And so that is part of my, I guess, growing up because I moved around and so on, right? But now I get in a job, right, which sort of required me to be in whatever. So, but fortunately, I didn't sell my home here, and my wife went with me to Zurich. We lived in an apartment there and so on, but she actually hated it in Zurich and so on. So she kind of moved back, and I started commuting back and forth to Zurich. So I did that for a couple of years, but that was not a positive overall lifetime experience. I had a fantastic job, very prestigious, working for a really wonderful company, traveling around the world, etc. But in my heart, I was not happy because I was just getting stressed out because I was traveling all the time, commuting between California and Zurich and so on, learning a new language, Swiss, etc. It's a different culture.
But was the cultural fit also there? The business culture fit also was a challenge?
People of Indian origin go to Switzerland all the time on vacation, right? You go to see all the Bollywood movies. They look so wonderful, right? Oh my God, Switzerland and so on. You try and live there as an Indian, and it is hard, right? And again, my wife told me, and she said, look, in the grocery stores, right? I mean, there was very subtle racism or so on that she faced. And I said, I don't face it. He said, why will you? You are part of the executive committee. You are reporting to CEO, right? You are top 8 dogs at ABB. Obviously, people respect you, and therefore they treat you with respect. But I am a homemaker. I'm living in Zolikon, and when I go to my hairdresser, whatever, they look funny at me, right? So it is not an easy thing. Like, I mean, as an aside, right? What I tell my friends, if you have to live abroad, America for Indians is actually a great place to be. Within America, if you have to live, California is actually a great place to be because it's like the United Nations, right? I mean, so I mean, I felt like a foreigner in Urbana-Champaign, but in California, I just everybody looks like, right? So anyway, that's an aside.
So then you, what did you say? You said, I can't deal with this at ABB.
So so that is why within 2 years I kind of switched jobs, and for the first time in my career, I took a step down to come back to the Bay Area. So I came and I reached out to some Bay Area companies, and I reached out to Accenture, and Accenture CTO Paul Doherty, who I was so when literally I say, hey, Paul, do you have a job for me? He said, well, the CTO job is mine. You are a CTO. You have to come and work for me. So for the first time in a career, I took a step down, right? So I was head of HP Labs, reporting to CTO. I became the head honcho. I was personally not happy. My wife is here. I'm there. I'm commuting all the time. And so my happiness index, personal life is not that good, right? So then I come back to the Bay Area, and my family life is happy. But then professionally, I'm no longer a CTO, right? So because I got the taste of the CTO.
But so how was that mentally and emotionally for you? Because you've been on this right, the youngest 10-year presidential award. I mean, all those things. That must have been a tough mentally for you, right?
That was tough mentally. So I mean, again, so this again, it was a wonderful. I mean, my colleagues at Accenture was fantastic. It was great, but it was professionally a step down, right? So that was emotionally not a very positive thing, and so on, right? So I did some interesting things. I made the best of what I had, right? And
do you think going to ABB was a mistake, looking back?
No.
Should you have done more due diligence on them?
I should have stuck it out at ABB, is what yes. What I look back today, had I not taken that easy way out. Hey, just let's move back to the Bay Area and so on, right? Because ABB was a super prestigious company, right? And I mean, I was making so many connections and so on and so forth. But it's that this is where I guess the Indianness part of it, right? I was not that ruthless business thing, right? I prioritized my family happiness, right, over this. So I have conversations with my wife. I said, why did you not stay and hang it out there, right? And just look, we had lots of friends in the Bay Area, right? And she missed her friends. And I mean, absolutely, she has to have a life, right? But that choice I made, right? I gave out too quickly, right, to move back. So essentially that reset my professional thing, right? Had I not moved back, I think I would have been in a different position, potentially a CEO level position of a $10 billion company, because CTOs have actually done that.
Because right now CTOs are reporting to the board.
Right. And so there are many CTOs.
And you are not a typical CTO. You are, I mean, look at you.
No, so do I look back? I did not look back on the HP Labs thing. Do I look back in going to ABB? No. I look back on leaving ABB to come back to Accenture, right? For making my personal life, right, higher priority over this.
So what is the message to some of our listeners about that ABB experience? Just stick it out. Don't care as much about your personal life.
Yeah, I mean, stick it out give it some more time, right? So 1 or 2 years is too little, right? Because it takes about 3 to 5 years to really have impact, right? And I did not give it that time. I just kept I gave up too early, right? And so then I came to Accenture, right? And again, so anyways, fortunately, as luck would have it, right, I got a second chance to be CTO at Schneider Electric, which is exactly the same as ABB, right? In some cases, I would say more well-known. I think more people know Schneider than ABB, even though it is. But so I got a second chance. But as luck would have it, so Schneider did not have a CTO prior to hiring me, right? So they looked at my activity at ABB. They said, oh, this is really good. And they wanted to create the structure of ABB, because ABB, that Swiss company, that the R&D structure was beautiful, right? And whereas Schneider was a very decentralized, nothing, completely running it like independent nations, right? That was the culture. So the CEO hires me and says, Prith, I saw what you did at ABB. I want you to do that here. But I didn't do anything at ABB. I just took over as with that centralized structure. So all I had to do was just follow, right? Here, I was asked to do a completely different thing against the culture of a highly decentralized company. And I was making good progress, but after 2 years, the CEO said, nope, I've changed my mind. I don't want it to be centralized. I want decentralized. So the role went away. And so that was of course, he said, oh, you can stay on as in a marketing thing, etc. So I had a position, but the real power of the role, right? I mean, here is the thing that you are running, creating the whole centralized thing. That thing went away, right? So I said, well, that doesn't make sense. So at that point, fortunately, this opportunity at ANSYS came in, right? And I joined ANSYS. And the story of ANSYS is I was recruited by Ajay Gopal, the current CEO, who knew me at HP. So he was the head of HP software when I was running HP Labs. So when he was looking at a CTO at ANSYS, again, a brand new role, he called me and said, Prith, I want you to join. And then I basically was about to say, not again will I make the mistake, because I've seen what happens with the newly created CTOs. But he convinced me, he says, no, Prith, we'll work on it together. So I joined as a single person CTO with nobody reporting to me. And now after 5 years, I have a very healthy, going strong CTO office that is doing some absolutely amazing technology strategies, talking to customers, creating this field city organization, driving innovations around AI, machine learning, and so on. So I am in a really happy situation working for a US company. My wife is happy. I am happy. I'm happy with my job. So all good guns, great things happening.
No, that's fantastic. Now, for people, a lot of people, know ABB, Schneider, you used to fill in a. What is ANSYS? Just in a short summary for our.
So ANSYS is a modeling and simulation company, right? So you look at the world around us, right? And you drive a car. That car, when it's designed, is designed by a CAD tool, by some CAD engineers using Autodesk or whatever, right? And then you have to actually simulate how that car will operate. That simulation is done by ANSYS. When you are flying a plane, that plane wing, right? Whether that thing is going to fly or not, right? So Boeing or Airbus builds that, designs that thing, whether it will fly or not is proved by ANSYS. In the energy area, you make a wind farm or whatever, right? Or whatever stuff, right? Solar panel, etc., made simulated by ANSYS. High-tech chips, any chip that you see from Intel, AMD, NVIDIA, right? Simulated by ANSYS. Healthcare area, a pacemaker, whatever. So we have more than 40,000 customers, and anything that you build, right? If you want to simulate it before you actually build it, is powered by ANSYS. So our mission is powering human innovation, advancing innovation. And we are a $2 billion software company with about 6,000 people. And we transform lives across these 5 verticals.
That's fantastic. Prith, I mean, there's so many things that I want to ask, and maybe it's the focus of, because your journey is just amazing. You talk a lot about luck, sometimes calling it the right place at the right time, etc. So when you look, there were some key defining moments in your life, many actually, and there were decisions to be made. When I look at it as, Don Bosco, Kharagpur, sticking it out, following your brother at Urbana Champagne, some of those. For people who are listening, obviously you say, hey, luck is a big, big factor. Coming from, a person who is industry, scientific driven, that's a very important thing that you're saying. But is there anything that you think that kind of, you had a storied career? I mean, you've done phenomenally in academics. You've done phenomenally in the corporate world. You did fairly well in startups in a worst time of startup history. So, what are the lessons here? I mean, if you were to just surmise it in a few ways.
So what I would summarize is the following, right? That I have always been motivated by learning new things, right? And when people say, here is a challenge, or it cannot be done, right? Rather than give up, I have sort of navigated my way through and then sort of tried to find a way out, right? I think I do well thinking quickly on my feet, right? And I'm very adaptive and so on. And it's a combination of my natural curiosity or whatever. So it is my drive towards to find out new things, curiosity, whatever, that has allowed me to be what I am, right? And again, one of my very, very good friends, we were just talking about an idea of a startup, and we were making something. So he brought his son with him to this discussion, and the son, who is 20 years old, he just told his dad, he says, because my friend, he is doing quite well, but he's not as sort of accomplished as I am, at least on paper, right? So he asked his dad flat out in front of me, he says, why is Prith uncle so successful? Sort of implication is compared to his dad, right? Yeah, and he says, why? I mean, you are both, because, I mean, he asked him, and he says, you both went to IIT Kharagpur, you both did your PhD at University of Illinois, And look at Prith uncle and look at you. We are actually same age, right? And that was a tough question. And I said, look, I don't want you to answer this. He said, no, this is a good question. He says, and I came home and I told my wife, this is what my friend said to his son. He says, it is Prith's ability to rapidly distinguish between signal and noise. So what he, and I asked him to double, he says, we all get lots and lots of stuff comes to us, right? Oh, there's AIML, oh, there's this, oh, there's HPC, there's quantum computing, there's a GPU and so on, right? Again, this is the part that I will sound like bragging, but what he was implying is Prith is seeing all this new technology come in, right? And he has time and time again have tried to sift through the noise and say the signal is this, right? So at ANSYS, for example, we are trying to do AI machine learning applied to simulation. And there's all kinds of things that we could have done with the future of ANSYS. I put my hand and I said, this is what we are going to work on, right? In the high performance computing area, we could have done shared memory. I said, oh, we are going to work on GPUs, right? Now, I sort of picked those things, and you may call them, but look at NVIDIA, the GPUs, right? So and look at the AI, right? So all those bets that I made in my career, this is what, we went into a 1 hour discussion, signal versus noise, right? So get all the noise that is coming in, right? And trying to identify these things and rapidly assimilate and say, this is what we're going to work on, and try to guide a team and motivate a team around this thing. And I call that strategic planning, right? And again, now I'm getting into business kind of stuff, right? Everybody talks about strategic plans, and I have built strategic plans at University of Illinois, College of Engineering, at HP Labs, at ABB, at all kinds, and at ANSYS, right? A strategic plan is a plan for the worst case, right? So you cannot do a strategic plan, right? For, oh, everything is fine. Oh, I think this is going to be good, and so on. I just build a case for the best case scenario. A good strategic plan is a plan that says, what if this bad thing happens, and we'll do this, right? So, I mean, I just give you a very specific example, right? The flood happened in Libya, right? They actually knew that there was a storm brewing for a week. No, I'm not blaming them. I'm just saying a good strategic plan would be for the government to have a plan. If there's an earthquake, we'll do this. If there is a flood, we'll do this, right? And we'll evacuate people and so on, right? The lucky companies somehow managed to go through and be prepared, right? Look at IBM, right? It's just gone through all kinds of things, and look at Sun and look at debt, right? They failed, but IBM has been successful. Look, and so.
But then, Prith, so Prith, one question about what your friend said, that you have the ability, and I agree with him completely, to distinguish between signal and noise. Is that a skill that can be learned, or is that just inherent in you? For our listeners, is that something they'll be able to?
Absolutely. Yeah, yes, you can learn. I mean, it's not like I was not born with that, right? I will tell you, I was born to be an academic. I was not born to be a business person, right? But so the signal to noise, what I will say is that my first 1 or 2 years at HP Labs, I made a lot of mistakes, right? I was trying to use my academic thing, right? Oh, let's do papers and so on. But I very quickly recognized the signal that, hey, to be successful in the corporate world, you need to really understand the business things and so on, and defocus these things and so on. I unlearned some of the academic stuff, right? In order to learn about the business world and so on. And then when I did the same thing at the startup world, right? Really be focused and made all kinds of mistakes. So the learning to sort of the signal from noise is something that, so you have to see where you're going wrong. So, and quickly adapting and so on. And I think we all have the ability. I don't think this is an innate thing and so on. I have tried to build a muscle to enhance that skill. Again, it may sound like bragging. I'm just saying This is, I'm relating what my friend told me.
Yeah. The one other important question I have is you've written a book on innovation. And that's to me, what you core thing about you is innovation. Same question I'll ask you, and this is about either an individual or a company. Can an individual learn to be innovative, or is this just people say, look, Elon Musk has this inherent ability to innovate, or whoever,
Or Steve
etc.,
Jobs or so
or
on,
Steve
Jeff
Jobs,
Bezos,
etc.
absolutely.
But you know, everybody, can people learn to be innovative?
I think they can. In fact, my book, Innovation Factory, right? The sort of 60-second summary of the book is that large companies so there are sort of three types of innovation I talk about. Horizon one, which is a short term, which is incremental motivation, sort of modifications to existing products. You have a laptop, you have a server. Next quarter's laptop will have 300 gigabytes of disk and 32 gigabytes of RAM, right? It's the same laptop, but with different features, right? That all large companies nail it. They do a great job. Going to adjacencies, right? Today I'm doing this. I have a product for US. I want to go to China with a different voltage, different sort of scripts and so on. That also they would do well. But for a company who is making laptops and making an iPhone, takes a Steve Jobs, right? That's Horizon 3 innovation, right? And for a company that is making sort of online retail of books and to go into cloud computing like Amazon requires Horizon 3 innovation, right? So that is the challenge that I talk about. And I said the way to do this is to practice what I call open innovation, which is saying that universities do a great job in the really futuristic Horizon 3 innovation, but they only are doing the ideas, right? So you need to talk to universities to learn what they are thinking about, right? So if I'm at ANSYS, I'm saying, hey, here is a professor at Carnegie Mellon or Stanford who is actually doing AI, ML applied to simulation. So learn from those people, right? But then those university people actually don't build products. So those products actually come from startups, right? So two areas of Horizon 3 innovation is look at startups, look at academia, and you combine it, right? And the organization that will do that is actually the CTO office of every company. And you cannot only rely on external things, right? Because then what have you done yourself, right? So you have to have a core central organization like an HP Labs, like an ANSYS lab, like an whatever that I have, right? But the role of those people should be, don't think, oh, it's not invented here. That's not good, right? Your role should be somehow bringing that innovation from yourself organically or from the outside. And your role is to bring that innovation to your company. Don't worry about whether you did it yourself or you managed to leverage an innovation from the outside world. That is the key message. That can be learned.
That's fantastic. I've learned a lot today. So now,
for example, give you like Apple, right? What did Apple do? They had the iPhone, the iPod, and they took the music and they put it together with music, sort of the iTunes and so on. Look at Sony. They had the Watchmen. They had Sony Pictures. They had everything, but they couldn't do it together, right? So Steve Jobs had the ability to connect and make a thing to happen, right? Sony had it all. They couldn't do it. That's the difference.
That's so true. So, Prith, now, where do you see your journey going from here? You've done it all: academics, industry, startups. I don't know what, but there's still so many chapters left in your book. All you have to do is ask your wife. She'll tell you there's at least 5 more chapters left. So, where do you see your journey?
So I see myself, literally giving back to society. I've been fortunate to have done innovation in academia, innovation in startups, innovation in large companies, and so on. A way to give back to society is through serving on boards, right? So I've served on 2 public boards, Cubic and Cray, and then a private board on Turntide. I've also served on nonprofit boards and so on. So it is my plan to be on more public, private boards, advisors, mentors to startup companies and so on. I live in the Bay Area. I mean, there are all kinds of startups that people come to me for advice, and I actually give free advice to people based on what I know.
That's fantastic. Fantastic. So giving back, and if people who listen to you, they come to us for mentor stuff?
Absolutely. I would love to be a mentor to one of your audience members.
Prith, finally, we have these very quick lightning round questions that I want to ask you. And we ask this to all our guests, is what is, and you kind of have defined this, but I want just a one-line answer. You defined it several times, very well, actually. What is your definition of Indianness?
It is the mix of the original Indian culture that we have, right? The strong family feelings and so on, the passion on the family and the culture, right? The tradition. I mean, I am a big, I mean, I didn't say this, right? But I'm a big fan of Indian classical music. I play the sitar on my own. So that going back to the roots, and I have always listened to, even in the Bay Area, when there's a classical music concert, I go and attend it and so on, right? So that is, so I've lived here more than 40 years, but I still are deeply connected to my original Indian, the food, the music, the culture, and so on. So that is what I call Indianness, making sure you remember your roots and hang on to the roots, but in a positive way.
Absolutely. That's a great answer. Prith, one person from either from India or US or anywhere else of Indian origin, not your brother, that inspires you.
It is actually Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose, who was the independent. Again, I have not met him. He died before I was born, but everything I have read about him and so on, he has really inspired me, right, to stand up against the British and actually to some of the Indian Congress people, even to Mahatma Gandhi and so on. He took a different path, right? So I am very inspired by Netaji Subhash.
Oh, that's fantastic. And
I know you did not ask that question. In here, the person who inspires me is actually Obama. I kid you not, I am a big fan of Obama. No, not because of that, because he is a person who is a deep thinker, and I have actually met him in person, but his ability to this high intellectual ability, both Bill Clinton and Obama, but Obama is at an absolutely different level, right? His intellectual ability, curiosity, take really complex things in the Middle East and so on, right? That signal to noise in an interview with Fareed Zakaria, right? I mean, usually presidents, they rattle off from scripts. This guy knows his stuff and the way he shares. So those are very important. So he is my local hero.
President Obama and Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose. Last one line, since we've got you. If you were talking to Prith, who was just graduating out of IIT Kharagpur, what would be the one or two very brief advice that you would give him to the Prith who's graduating from IIT?
Follow your passion. Just don't do things just because, I mean, even though I have not practiced it, right? So I sort of followed my family's expectations. I have to do a PhD, do a whatever, etc. Right? So there's an expectation because my brother was so accomplished, right? I sort of followed my brother, right? But what advice would be, follow your passion, right? If you're graduate from IIT, right, and you are really interested in music or drama, right, and you think you can really do a good job, just follow your passion and do that really well. I know of so many people, right, who actually went to IIT and then they went into drama, went into music and so on. That incredible thing. So again, I'm not saying all of you should go into drama, but if you start up, if it's an investment banking or whatever, right, follow your passion. That is what I would recommend.
90% of the people I ask, they say this thing, and I always wonder, people who look back, they somehow feel that maybe they should have followed their passion more or something like that. But no, but that's very good advice, Prith. Thank you so much. You've been so generous with your time, but also with your conversation. I really appreciate it. This has been very inspirational for not for just our listeners, but also for me. So thanks for taking the time.
Thank you for reaching out.